What if the chip in the brain does let you know everything? You speak all the languages, you can access all of the entirety of human knowledge, you can just do math, all the skills, right? Maybe that's not bad because it just makes the entirety of the human experience like creativity. This episode, we're talking about the future of human augmentation. Will we all become robots? Will Armand eventually have a robotic penis?
What's the first appendage that you augment?
For every guy, it's the penis.
According to my spam messages and my text messages, it's apparently my penis.
Yeah.
Laser rocket arm.
Laser rocket arm?
Peyton Manning.
Is that from what movie is that where the guy
Do I go
gets a
smaller?
broken arm and he...
The Rookie?
The Rookie? No. Little Big League?
Oh, that movie's so good.
Little Big League.
God and Hosa.
God and Hosa.
It's a Rowan
Gardner.
No, but really, what is the first thing
Rosenberger.
that you would enhance about yourself?
Shouldn't we record this?
We are recording.
We are
this.
recording.
We are recording this?
Yeah, this is all part of it.
Oh,
Baby.
that'll
really?
be my
Oh.
my heart, boys.
Don't I feel dumb?
Oh,
Your
God.
heart.
Yeah. Not even my physical heart, my emotional one.
This isn't being recorded.
I was assuming you meant
Oh, it is?
your spiritual heart.
Yeah.
Do you mean your physical heart?
My feelings.
This last episode's always hard.
This is great, Steven. Jump in. The water's warm. So,
Wait, what are we talking about?
human enhancement.
Oh,
Gene editing.
yeah.
And what are the lines?
With the lines.
Do we cross them?
Okay. I want Armand's take on this.
What you get?
Actually.
What does that
Give
even
him
mean?
a prompt. Give
I'm-
him a
yeah.
prompt.
I was going to give him a prompt.
Okay.
I was going to give him a prompt. Okay.
Let's all take a little suck back here.
I could use a cheers. There hasn't been a cheers yet today.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I don't have
you
a
need
beer.
a glass.
I know. I need a beer.
That was weak.
Fuck.
Aluminum?
I was in between drinks.
Wait, have you been sucking down
No,
flavored
I've been
soda
drinking
water while
I've
we've been
drinking
boozing?
beer.
That is
and
flu of
I
aspartame.
killed an almost entire bottle of Sauv Blanc.
That is
All right.
full of bad things.
I drank a full bottle of soft blanc.
Continue with your
I'm
prompt.
from
sir.
Rhode Island.
I'm going to enhance my penis.
Okay.
Okay.
I want to know, is there any line for you? Is there any enhancement that you won't take? Will you fully merge with the machines? Will you get robotic legs that let you dunk?
I want
Like
to turn into
LeBron.
space dust. I want to turn into conscious, sentient space dust. I want to be like Harry Potter with an invisible cloak.
Are there
Like,
no
you can't even find me. if
Are
you
there
want.
no sort of like negative effects to taking the enhancements? We've all seen sort of what CRISPR is capable of doing. And what CRISPR can do, it can change your progeny's outcomes.
Right.
It can also change yours. I think that you can change your hair color with CRISPR technology.
Yeah, it can take out specific gene expressions like DNA code, and then now I think they can actually copy pasta DNA code into yours, which is a different level of enhancement that it hasn't been available to us. So now the software of humans is kind of open source, and you can copy paste into code. And so when we talk about defects, I mean, there's defects in code all the time, some that are not foreseen.
Yeah, you don't know the negative ramifications. So my dad showed me an article in Science magazine years ago.
Can that be a character?
Yeah. So he showed me this article in Science magazine years ago, and he was like, "Hey, this technology is going to be pretty profound." And the article was talking about how they can eliminate mosquitoes from our existence. And I was thinking
Uh-oh.
I was like,
Butterfly effect.
whoa, that could be pretty nice.
That ends with the apes invading.
Yeah, on my patio, that'd be pretty
Yeah.
cool. But then it's like, well,
What is the
But
effect
then
of
what?
that?
Yeah. And as you begin to play God, and start to modify the existence of our reality so much, we don't know how things play out. The dominoes as they fall.
I think it's easy to talk about maybe some of the easy ones we would do. Like if you could get rid of cystic fibrosis, would you?
Sure.
I feel like those are easy. We eliminate all. I don't want to have a disease.
Right. So
I
those
think-
ones are easy. We
I
wipe
think
those off the board.
Yeah, I think we wipe those off. We don't want cystic
Like,
fibrosis.
let's say
No bueno.
you are two deaf parents and you realize that your child could be deaf. Like, would you use CRISPR to maybe make sure they can hear?
I mean, I would.
Yeah, I sure would. That'd be nice.
So those ones are easy. Diseases,
Easy.
maybe we'll call them like defects in the code that
Well,
you
just
fix the
to,
bugs
since
first.
we're on it, there will be a certain percentage of the population that I think is more than we assume that would rather not even do that.
Well, I assume it's a lot.
Because they will not even be comfortable playing God to the level of even eliminating or preventing a terrible disease.
Just to
because
Stephen's
they
point.
believe that it's God's will.
I think you're dead right. I just want to actually gauge our selves and see like at what level do you think that people don't want that? Like, where do we believe the populace is like, nah, let's not even.
I think you can cross off
Dabble.
most religious
Most
groups.
religious folks are going to be like, no.
Negative. Don't want that kind of intervention. I
Yeah,
mean,
to the degree at which they are
So what's the religious
Observing
populace like
of their
globally? It's like
beliefs.
50%.
oh my God, more than that.
More.
Only 10% of the population is atheist.
yeah, but I mean, I think
But
they're
agnostic is a big.
they like
portion.
the invention
is.
of like things like penicillin. So like I think they're open to some things, and it just matters of like
Don't
how.
question these people.
Okay,
I'm
so
just
let's call 50% of the populace is thinking probably like, nah, let's not even mess with.
Super hard to ballpark it, but yeah, I'm comfortable at that because I would say like there's a lot of people that consider themselves religious that don't really practice and
Yeah.
are not overly dogmatic or strict in their beliefs. But there is a percentage of people that I would put probably under 50% that are like, look, life, the universe, my existence, my children's existence is God's will.
Okay.
And
That's a major
I
percentage.
would
of
put
the
myself
world.
in the next category, which is not religious, but I'm worried about the downstream effects
the
of it.
unknown ramifications.
Yeah, like you could certainly run a bunch of Monte Carlo scenarios and like if you adjust this gene, what's going to happen in the future. But
Sure.
there's not like 4 lifetimes of data to go off of.
and in Monte Carlos, famously, you run about 1 million simulations, but all it takes is one to go awry, where it's like, oh, we just ruined everything.
We can already change babies before they're born, right? We can
I mean,
pick their eye color and stuff like that.
well, I think you can figure out if your baby has like things like cerebral palsy or some things pretty early on, and then there is a decision to make at that point. So I'm not sure it's changing, but it's understanding that there is an issue. I don't know if the service is available yet to
Let's assume it is.
pay to fix
Let's
it.
assume it is, and it's safe.
Okay.
How much of
Big
your
assumption,
baby are you customizing? I
Okay,
think we don't want a
good
deaf
one.
baby.
Yeah.
We don't want a baby that's gonna like have like some severe, disease or something. If you could just turn that off,
Right, and
where is the line?
so, like, if it's fully customizable, I'm taking like a 6'4", 6'7" chick who can just dunk on fools.
Or serve 110 mile an hour tennis ball.
Yeah, you don't want them too big that they're awkward.
So you
just go
would
superhuman.
customize like physical elements of your baby.
Yeah, I think she would appreciate.
You take
that.
all the upsells.
Well, I mean, I'll just be honest. I was on a track to play for the Lakers until I realized I was a 5'10" Asian man with a 70s mustache.
It's kind of weird if you're customizing your own daughter, doesn't it? You're like, doctor's like, would you like her to be extremely hot? And you're like, oh yeah, yes, but
But not
not.
too,
No, not like.
Well, I mean, are like attractiveness features even like identifiable? Like that's cultural. That's attractiveness has changed.
We've
throughout.
identified your Italian schnoz gene, and we want you to know if you want us to decrease it. Yeah.
So first layer,
Take her
I'm
beard off.
I'm hearing that for everyone at this table, the disease part is easy.
Yes.
But I'm also hearing that for a certain percentage of the population, they would even struggle with level 1
Yes.
because then they would be playing God. Okay. But everybody here is comfortable removing disease from the gene pool.
Like lifelong debilitating diseases, yes.
Yeah.
from at least your own offspring in the areas in which you control. Yeah.
We might create 10 more by doing that, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain about that.
I think a good example of this is like, I don't know, girl stuff's weird, but like if you have a boy, and the doctor's like, your son's going to be 4'11", we could just flip this gene on and he'll be 6'3". Do you do it?
I would do it.
I mean, I would like. I would do it.
Do his other organs come along with that growth, or
Nick? How does it feel?
I don't know.
4'11" human.
well, I've been through this.
So the most interesting part, there are many interesting parts to this conversation for me, but the most interesting is, what does it mean even at all to play God? Who says that he is even playing God? Who says we haven't been playing God all along? Who says that evolution hasn't been a process of playing God all along? Who says that epigenetics is not just as much of a factor as being able to flip that switch?
Well, flipping the switch is a little more direct.
It's direct, but I'm just as in control of my environment.
I would say that
It's not as
I would say that
linear and like precise of a sniper.
like we imagine
shot.
God as this being that can go,
Yeah.
and then anything happens, right? So the closer we get to that, where it's literally push this button and we change your baby's eyes. Push this button and we boost your
Yeah.
baby's IQ 40 points. Push this button, your boy's taller. Push this button,
Because
everybody's
everything
better looking.
has been left up to a dice roll up until pretty recently, right?
Yeah, to an extent. And I think we can do like selective stuff right now, right? Where they have multiple embryos and they keep
Damn.
one of them on the basis of some things. So people are
Yes.
already
Wow.
tweaking their babies to an extent. But I have no doubt in the
So
future,
hold on. You're
gonna
gonna,
be able
like
to
they give people like hold on, just because I didn't know this. They're gonna give somebody like 3 shots at it and like take your best one.
It's just like semi IVF where there's like, hey, we have 4 embryos and we think one is better than the other. We're gonna drop this in you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Damn.
Yeah, you could be like, I want that one.
Whoa.
This baby has XYZ.
So
So that's
that
already pretty significant.
that exists
Yeah.
today.
yeah.
yeah.
And the other question I want to ask is like, what exists today is like with the technology as it stands. It's like, how customizable is it? Like, I think like you mentioned eye color, hair color, but like is height, are all these other factors customizable with existing technology, or are you kind of looking down the road?
I'm looking down the road. Like I want to envision the world like 50 years from now to a place where we all think it's going to go and sort of like wrestle with the implications of that.
Yeah.
Because I do think we're going to get to the point where you have a baby and then the doctor's just like, okay, here's all your attributes. Just
Right.
pick what you want.
And then does it become like a capital allocation problem yet again, where it's like, well, you can make your baby 6'3", but then the IQ has to stay around this 90 level. You know, like,
Wait,
and then,
you think it's gonna be like creating a new player in like
yeah.
Madden, where
you
like you
gotta
only
out-
have like 100 attribute
it's like
points.
fantasy sports. We only have so much
That's
budget
not
in
a
your.
bad analogy for it.
Because
Like
like,
the creative player mode in
well,
FIFA.
because not everyone has unlimited money. So it's like, well, you know, if I were to be the
I
guy
can
on the-
literally imagine the chart with like each feature and the price next to it.
You're right. And like,
Yeah, and it's a checkbox.
as I'm the doctor guy, like I'm just putting myself in the shoes of the guy administering. I'd be like, well, pay me a little more and I'll get you here. Pay
Yeah.
me more, I'll get you here.
Yeah, and I'd be like, I'm going to Tijuana.
I mean, at what point does that not become your kid? That's the thing. Like, you know, I think there's this like innate intention for you to procreate, but like specifically to procreate your own
These are the
DNA.
biggest
Like,
questions, man.
like you want your
So-
genes to pass on to the next
but
gene
aren't
pool.
they your genes?
They are
like,
your genes.
Our genes, like they have like this inherent randomness in them, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have a kid, it's not destined to be exactly.
It was always
5'9",
part of the dice
right?
roll.
They could be arranged.
So it's just like you can take the
Green
max.
eyes are a possibility
Yes.
for my children.
The Punnett squares
You just-
would allow it. You
You're
just,
just
have to,
rigging the game a little bit.
yeah, you express the genes that are available. I like that. I want to take max. I want to go max level. Whatever that even means.
Aren't
I
you?
think Nick's question is like, man, there's so many examples of those questions that are going to be hugely debated. I brought this up in an episode that we did similar on the future and technology, and I think that these things are going to cause like abortion level debates
Oh.
across
Oh,
society.
way beyond that.
And like the
Yeah.
the
Way
idea of
beyond
abortion
This
is
is
going
gonna
to
be
be
nuts.
so blasé to these
Right.
future folks. They're going to be like, oh yeah,
They're going to be like,
solve that.
wait,
ages
how
ago."
did you
Like,
have babies?
People will kill each other over this.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
what
I
if
can
what
see
if
it.
one country, let's just put the bad guy as China, is like, well, we're gonna make sure that the men are a little stronger, they have bigger muscles. Like we're gonna create a better army.
Do authoritarian regimes
They're gonna
reign supreme?
they're gonna mandate that
Mandate.
your
Damn.
boys have to have X number.
We'll sit around
and then let's like
in
we're
our
sitting around and
democracy,
like, well,
like all arguing, and they're just like, "This is what we're doing."
Is this the arms race of the future?
Wow.
Like,
no, that's bots. That's drones. That's like
I don't know.
It's
I feel
both.
like this could
This could
Both.
definitely move in parallel,
Like
at
if
level of importance.
if like a country like China just says we don't give a shit about ethics, any of bioethics, we don't care. We just want to take
we
over
want the
world.
superior race.
Yeah, it
Right.
doesn't mean arms race like in direct military conflict, but it does mean arms race in terms of like the space race. It was a race of like superiority of like how do we get out there faster, quicker, better, and accomplish more milestones. Human race that reigns supreme is like probably the greatest arms race
That's big.
that of all time.
That's big.
Like ever.
Ooh.
To be able to say that we're going to beat everybody to creating the most highest level
Right.
superhuman beings, I don't think there's ever.
So do
been.
people go
And
tribal?
Authoritarian regimes will reign supreme. They will.
like
They will.
Don't
Of
they,
course they
I mean,
will.
don't they just take us
We'll
over
become fractured.
if we go, we don't want to do this, we want to play God, and then they produce like 1 billion super soldiers?
Yeah, and they'll not, and so what are the ramifications of that? Let's go out 50 years. They're smarter, they're faster, they're better looking, so they actually start to become the superior gene pool, like mini gene pool as a whole. So they start to actually create more offspring, better offspring. They literally, this is the break in the species.
Wait, hold on. I gotta hold on. Girls out there like the dad bod these days.
Until they see jacked Chinamen, dude.
I'm already
Jacked
I'm already here.
You're taken. You're taken.
Oh my god.
They're like a 6'3" dad bod.
Totally.
All right. So what you're saying is this sort of arms race of gene editing is going to eventually lead to the schism in the species itself, because you're going to have a choice to like opt in or opt out, and when you opt in, you kind of got to opt like all the way in, and when you opt out, you are all the way opted out. And then I think this gets amplified because in addition to the genetic difference, right, you're going to have like this gene pool basically splitting. We're also going to have all of this technology that we augment ourselves with as well. Like, what if you can get a chip in the brain? What if you can get some robotic enhancements to make you run faster? Do you hold your breath for 20 minutes underwater or whatever else we do, right? So
Yeah.
you stack those two things on each other, and then you put that next to just like modern me right here.
Exactly.
I'm
And just to
I'm gonna
add
look
even
like
more color,
I'm gonna look like an ant.
this is like a person that speaks every language on the planet, has all the knowledge of the world.
They
in
know
their
kung
brain.
fu.
They know kung fu.
Yes.
They are Neo, who's exited the Matrix, versus the people that are just like walking around aimlessly with no idea who they are or what they're doing with their lives. So I think we overly identify with our race and our nationality and our ethnicity and our country. And really, in the future, we need to begin to identify with which side of this race are we going to be on. And to be honest with you, I'm not comfortable with any of this at all. Like, I have a big problem, like, to go back to the previous question of, I don't know if I'm ready to play God. I don't know if I'm ready to even upgrade myself into superhuman level as we're describing. That's a lot.
But
But I
there's-
don't know if you have a choice.
There's a whole cohort of people who take hormonal supplements, testosterone, NAD, that whole cohort of like human productivity, personal development, willing to take as many supplements as possible, go through procedures. I think if it was like commercially available, I think we'd find that like other podcasters would be talking about, well, I use this new CRISPR feature that's available now to modify.
So
And
you're hitting on something important that I think is like, I don't think it's going to happen in such a sudden way where it's like all of a sudden there's this unbelievable revolutionary technology available that allows us to make this like crazy decision of like, what does our future offspring look like? I think it's going to happen before our eyes in many ways. We're already doing it. with everything you just said, Nick. And so I think it's just going to continue to be like accessible to those of the means to be able to make those decisions, to have access to that. And over time, we're there. We're already doing it. And so like CRISPR, of course, is going to be available. We should talk about CRISPR a little bit if you have either of you have any notes that you want to share. But it's obviously designed initially to like eradicate disease and like handle a lot of the, you know, so-called like genetic malfunctions and issues that we have and we see, and we want to help these people. But like eventually it's going to get to the point where it becomes like this very superhuman, developing ourselves to just be better, faster, stronger, more beautiful. So yeah, I think that we overly identify. This is the thing that I think about the most is like all of this like ethnicity, race, all this stuff is nonsense compared to the question of like, will I take the pill or not?
Yeah. And I kind of agree with you that I think the technological like augmentation end of things will be a little slower, but I do kind of feel like the prenatal gene editing stuff will come very quickly, I think. And that's going to be an immediate choice for people.
I hope so. That would be fantastic. Eliminate just like the most.
Assuming no risk.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, the alternative is you have a child who has like this lifelong debilitation. It's like there's almost like nothing works.
Is there any part of you guys that just feels like, well, if that were to be, that is God's will?
What do you mean? Just the disease thing?
In my own personal opinion, I there is a part of me that thinks that. Of course, yeah, I think there's a part of me that thinks that. But I've weighed the pros and cons internally, and I would choose to like give the child
to have some control,
a more robust existence.
I think, yeah,
according to me,
the force of regret, you know, knowing that like your child could be 15, 20, 30 years old and like know that, Eric, you had the choice to like fix this in me and you didn't. My dad didn't even like, take the opportunity to like cure this problem when, you know, while your child's alive, you would do anything in your power to fix that thing, you know, through the healthcare system or whatever it may be. So I think, you know, when forced with it, you might take it, assuming
it's like you're doing
no risk.
Upstream in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
You're
I was born with my freaking foot on backwards. I'd be pretty mad if I was sitting here today and I was like, yeah, my mom just didn't want to play God. So now I can't walk.
Right.
Like I'd be very upset.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom. And now
thanks, Mom, for not doing that.
Yeah. Now you're hiking the Pacific Northwest.
Or you're like, I have 4 legs now because my mom decided to change my earlobe shape and there's a defect.
I've had 3 legs my whole life, and you know what? Chicks love it.
You and Austin Powers. Yeah. So the reality is, like, most guys would immediately just go like, all right, how do I make my dick bigger?
Yeah.
Just tell me.
Yeah, Doc. Come on.
Just tell me.
Feed it to me.
If you can't do it for me, do it for my baby. Make me proud.
I actually wonder what this would
Rogan
be.
jokes about this often. He's the first enhancement that like every guy is ever going to do as soon as they have access to it is like, yep, penis enlargement. Biggest industry there will ever be.
That wouldn't be my first enhancement.
No? Would you just make your brain bigger? What would you do?
I actually don't know if I would do this, actually. I was just thinking about it because my initial reaction was like, ooh, I want to upload like the piano skills of like Vladimir Horowitz directly into my brain, like the way Neo learns Kung Fu.
He's like, I know Kung Fu.
Yeah,
I know
like,
jujitsu.
I know every ballad and I just know every song it's ever written. But I like wonder, like, also would that remove part of the joy to an extent? Like, do we get to a point where it's like some like Greek tragedy where we become so perfect and there's like no struggle and everybody's good at everything, and then there's just something awful about that?
I like that.
You still have to put it into work. You have to exercise the knowledge. You still have to master it.
But what if you don't? Like, what if all this motor learning and everything is just like a program that can be like tweaked in your brain and like you don't
literally
have to
like
do
the
any
Matrix?
work. Yeah, it's just like you just know all the songs and you have the motor skills.
Creativity would still reign paramount.
The
But there's
actual exhibition of the new skill.
That's the weird
How
thing
you
about
exercise
classical,
it.
though, is like it's not like jazz is interesting because there's a lot of improv, there's a lot of on the spot stuff, a lot of classical. There's a little bit of interpretation, but it's mostly about playing the stuff as it is and like tweaking it a little bit. But it's not like conceiving of a painting from scratch and painting it. It's almost like a little bit quantitative in that regard.
So in so many ways, like Socrates is superior to Beethoven.
Right, your goat of goats is worthless.
Worthless, completely gone.
It's not worthless.
Yeah,
yet.
I just downloaded it.
we're
I
done.
just downloaded it.
we're
It's fine.
we're
No,
done.
like wait, hold on.
Oh, I think we're done. Okay.
No,
So,
I literally just said the creative part is different. The creating part is different from the playing.
Yeah, but I just
like a player
downloaded all of
piano.
Beethoven, and it's fine.
Yeah, but you didn't write all of Beethoven.
it's not this.
First to discover.
We're not
You
going to
said
rehash.
it.
Let's not
You
rehash
said it
this
yourself.
debate
First to
again.
discover. It's worthless.
Let's not rehash this debate again.
I still think there could be pleasure. There's still a length of processing time, and that processing time gets faster and faster and faster once the information is like directly implantable in our brains. And like you said, my then question was, well, what about the processing to exhibition to actually like implement? Then that becomes like, okay, even if you guarantee that becomes like automatic and natural, like Neo saying, I know Kung Fu, I still think there's pleasure in the act and in the creativity. As
Well, I have a question for all you guys, but like my question is like, I don't think you can change your genetic code. I think you can change the expressions of your code. So like there would still be a difference between like your athletic prowess and some other guy, right? Like your full expression might be.
But I thought that's what CRISPR does. It removes certain genes and copy paste some in.
Each person's nature is fixed, I believe. So like, Armand might be still dominant physically over some other guy if they're both enhanced to their full potential.
I see. Okay.
Right?
Baseline.
Like if you maximize your potential, it's like you can only go as far as your potential.
Unless you find like a gene that like specifically focuses on fast twitch muscles. You're saying like if you max them out.
Yeah, why wouldn't we be able to just edit the rest of the gene code at some point? Like, don't we ultimately get to the point where every little nuance of you is something that can be tweaked?
Perhaps if it's mechanical, like if it becomes like a robotic.
I was just thinking about this. Like, I think the game theory plays out just like it does on a country level, just like it does on like, in a neighborhood level, like almost like a keeping up with the Joneses effect. If your cohort of peers who also have babies choose this advantage, let's call it, I think people, the game theory plays out where eventually most people take the option.
I want to build on something you suggested earlier. Like, I was wondering if maybe I'm thinking about this wrong, because I have a bit of an aversion to putting a chip in my brain and losing like part of
Do you
my
have
soul or
to
something.
take out the chip that you
Yeah, I
already
was gonna-
have in order to put it back? Okay.
I was going to ask you about that.
It's called an upgrade, dude. What are you talking about?
No, I have a bit of an aversion to it too. I was going to ask
Yeah,
you.
because
I'm scared.
It's something that I would do for my kids, but probably opt out myself. Like I have this urge to just withdraw from society and get like a ranch in Montana with some sheep and have my dog run around and herd
Homestead
them
it.
and just kind of unplug from civilization and opt out of that.
It's a beautiful future. I can see it.
But I'm also wondering if there's like if there's a non-dystopian side to this. Like what if the chip in the brain does let you know everything? You speak all the languages, you can access all of the entirety of human knowledge, you can just do math, all the skills, right? Maybe that's not bad because it just makes the entirety of the human experience like creativity. Like you don't. It's not about like acquiring these skill sets or something. Maybe it's like an equalizer in a way, because like people who were born gifted, like everybody now has access to the same sort of knowledge baseline.
I have a weird
now,
question.
like the differentiator is what you do with it. It's like this
I
creativity.
don't think it plays out like that. Like someone needs to build the home, dig the ditch, like
I don't think
farm
those people,
the food.
I don't think those people exist in this kind of future, though. I think this future inevitably ends in just infinite. If you have 10 billion people walking around, with chips in their brains that all know the entirety of human knowledge, like how many years do you think it'll take us to get the Star Trek replicator
because
machine?
you're assuming like perfect human coordination.
Why do we need perfect human coordination? We just need like 1 million people with chips in their brain with all of the knowledge of science.
And everything that's like labor related that human beings do not want to focus on is solvable through innovation.
That all goes away through robots eventually, don't you
Yeah,
think? Like,
I
don't
do.
you think
I do.
ultimately, like all menial tasks just go by the
I
wayside?
do. I think
I don't
that-
think there's a plumber robot that's going to come in and diagnose my problem.
Oh, I do. Or I think there's a guy who's like maybe super high level.
Right.
There are some robots
Runs
who work
some
on it.
plumber
but, like,
robot
you know.
business, makes all the money off of it, but it just so happens to be he's like supervising.
Is
it to a
your
certain degree.
future dependent at all on like your vision of Montana with the fields and stuff? Like, does this change at all with like the chip in the brain, or is this always your outcome? Like now you have all the ability in the world. Like, are you still just doing ranch with the dog, Montana?
Well, I feel like if you don't take the pill, you have to remove yourself from society because
You do.
otherwise you're just going to be this like peon, like that is just like a lesser than, right?
Oh, I was
So
assuming.
feel like the
I was
only-
assuming you took the pill.
No, I was saying I
No.
would do that to avoid taking the pill, maybe.
Got it.
To
You
just
don't.
like
You don't take the pill.
live out the rest of my
I think
days as an
Steven is
ordinary human.
describing like two paths. Like you,
Farm or something, you know?
You take the pill, you reign supreme, you play the game, you live forever. Or you move to the farm and you live the old life, the old way, the natural human way. The splitting of the species. You have to choose which side of the species.
Do Amish folks already like look at life like this, where they're like, "Hey, we're just gonna live live on a farm"?
I feel like
we'll
they never took the
raise a
first
house."
step, and by never taking the first step, they've never had to ride the slippery slope of everything
No
else.
original sin.
Like it seems like we're on a path that has no end right now, right? Like if you look around us, like clearly we want to do augmentation. We do plastic surgery. We use filters on the internet. We are basically using like AI to do the filters on the internet now, so that we can do full length video. And like we're like fast playing this world where we just become different people online. You know, our most idealized selves online. But eventually, that's just going to bleed out into reality. Like we're just going to become our most idealized selves in the physical world as well, because why wouldn't we if we do that in the digital?
Oh, you bring up a great point. What about the idea of you not even needing reality augmentation when we have a full metaverse? Like when everyone's living in a digital life, like who even needs physical augmentation?
Oh God, I wonder if that's like a bad society. I wonder if that's like the Ready Player One society where we create that for the people so that they can live in it because the real world sucks for them, so they have to have this like fallback option. I like question if humans can ever truly exist and be happy like purely in the metaverse.
I believe this is called Transcension Hypothesis.
Whoa, what?
Transcension
I haven't
Hypothesis.
heard
Teach
this.
me.
Teach me.
Well, it's like simulation theory is like half baked in the sense that we assume that we move outward, or rather, like if you look at specifically like the Fermi Paradox, right? We talked about the Fermi Paradox one episode. It's like, where are all the aliens? This is the biggest conundrum in the universe. But Transcension Hypothesis posits that basically we move inward. Everything is inward, and we're overly focused on outward expansion and exploration, and that all the actual other civilizations that do exist in the universe eventually become tired and bored of this idea of like outward exploration and land on the idea that actually what they should have been doing all along is the inward exploration,
Like a
and that
hyper
every
mind.
single civilization that does exist, that is out there, the reason we're not finding each other is because of this irony of the Transcension Hypothesis, where we transcend being human being, we move into our own bodies, into our own minds, into our own metaverses, and lose ourselves in nothingness that is like beyond the physical realm.
I'd never heard of that, and I
never heard of that.
I kind of dig it. I think it like
Hold on, I'm processing this.
I think it makes sense. There's like a
Like,
hyper.
It is like chapter 2 of the Fermi Paradox in so many ways, and actually is more akin to like why simulation theory makes sense,
Sure.
and that why we may actually be in the simulation.
No, I mean even further evidence of why simulation theory makes sense. Simulation theory makes sense on like many levels.
It's fucking scary that it does.
Yeah.
It's like so many ways you back into that whole equation, and it's like,
It's like harder to disprove than to prove for sure.
Yeah. Probabilistically speaking, we're doing it. We're in it. But like, I really like where I don't know if you guys want to keep going. I could go on that as well. But I kind of had Transcension Hypothesis footnoted for the simulation theory episode. But I like where you were going, Stephen. It's like, eventually a human being is going to have to make that decision. Which species are they going to be part of? Either opt out by going to the farm, because the only way to survive being around all these lunatics that have taken the pill is to get completely away from them, to get off the grid, to completely actually remove that as even like a possibility for your life. The other aspect of it that I think is most important that we haven't talked about is like accepting mortality. So I do believe that taking the pill, with that comes longevity.
Yes.
Longevity beyond anything that we can even imagine today.
Yes. I think that's the first domino. It's one of the first dominoes.
Yes.
Really is to like end disease, and
that's where all the focus is.
Yeah, and I think that would be sort of the first dominoes.
Yeah,
really.
so everyone is focused on longevity in the pursuit of immortality, and then comes the vanity and the aesthetics and the penis enhancement. So yes, people want that. They want the latter. But first they want to solve.
Well, this is interesting because in our immortality episode, I feel like I was the only one who didn't want to die.
No, you weren't.
No, we were discussing two different topics. Armand and I were saying that we don't want to not die ever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So you don't want to be invincible.
No.
Yes.
You just want to be immune from death by aging
For longer.
Like,
I always want
Yeah.
to live longer, just not forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to live as long as possible, as long as I have the ability to, opt out at some point.
I
want that
still
optionality.
want to know deep down that I'm a mortal being, because if I don't know that, then everything is meaningless to me. And I believe that the root of human existence is rooted in mortality.
Well, you're mortal if you can fall off a cliff and die, even though if without doing that you would live like 500 years.
There's a big shout out to anyone who
It's
ever
true.
listened to Alfalfa podcast like prior to episode 10, because like this is an early
Yeah.
episode.
I guess what
was.
I'm saying is it weird to want to basically have the option of living forever, but also simultaneously not want to turn into like a human robot?
I don't know. I think like in order for humanity to improve, people need to die. Like we complain about like boomers and the fact that we have like a octogenarian in the presidency, and that boomers hold these values that we don't necessarily hold, and we kind of wish they would like leave so we can implement our values in the world. And you kind of need people to die off. So
Not
their
if everyone
ideas-
has access to the same level of information. in the
But you're
universe.
also assuming that they are willing to change.
No,
They're willing to
I'm
change
actually
those
assuming
views.
that they're going to be the most valuable people in the world.
No.
Because they're going to be the wisest.
No, wisest or the most conservative.
We do get more conservative as we get older.
We're
But if
experiencing this
everyone
now.
has-
Everyone has access to the internet.
If everyone has, but they can't.
Wait.
Their processing power is way slower. Have you watched the generation, 2 generations before you use a computer? What we have is a processing problem. The faster you can process, we have a meta learning problem. The faster you can learn the information, the better. The processing speed is too low. If everyone was on the equal playing field, had absorbed all the intelligence of the universe, and the only difference was age and wisdom, you actually would value those people in society, I think.
Well, don't you also think that part of the reason old people hang on to stuff for so long is that they like sense their mortality and they're like grasping at something to just leave behind? And if like that wasn't the case, like if we're all gonna live to like 1,000, what's the difference if like you're 70 and I'm 37? It's
nothing.
marginal, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it starts to become kind of like arbitrary.
Nick doesn't agree with this take. He's making faces.
Well, I mean, look at our political landscape now. Like, there's people like in the good old days, this is what happened, and I think they would like to go back to those days. What do they consider their prime? They would like to go back to those days, and like, I think it's very hard to convince someone who's older like to change their entire value system. Like, their value system was developed amongst the decades that they lived, in which their like brain and their spirit was formed, and it's going to be hard to change that.
I just don't know if I can wrap my head around the idea that people have to die for humanity to move forward. I'm
It
not
helps.
saying it's
It helps.
wrong. I'm just not sure if that's a.
I mean, on the grander
given.
scheme of things,
That
like
doesn't compute for me.
everything has to die in order for people to live on. Like, you know, animals have to
This
die.
is
like,
why I believe in
Plants have
in-
to die, like-
in like we talked about, like immortality is not the answer for me. I think that's one problem, but the deeper problem is the existential crisis that the person goes through when they realize that all of their actions have zero implication. There is no consequence to anything you do, think, or create. Like that immediately becomes meaningless.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I don't want.
The conversation has gotten too abstracted. I think it's too meta. Like
I love it.
I don't think there's like a.
I bathe in this.
There's going to be a lot of steps before we even get to the point of like living to 1,000
Fine.
before we get to the point of like immortality. So we can like take this step by step. I
Okay.
believe.
Take me with you.
I'm with you. I want mortality.
Sure. Okay. So let's assume you didn't have immortality. Let's assume you were still back at the phase of just pure gene editing and turning yourself into a superhuman, and the world has fractioned off.
You can
And
cure cancer. You're living
Yeah.
to 250. Like,
okay. So what do you guys think are the implications at that point? Let's just like zoom forward like 50 to 100 years at least.
Does
What?
overpopulation even come into the play?
Yeah, that's
at that point.
Where disease is just gone and everybody lives longer and healthier and happier, but they're not like superhumans.
So we don't think there's any capital allocation problems when we got the entire populace living to 250.
Well, isn't that good though? Like, doesn't that solve our deflation problem?
Yeah. So you think that
Because productivity
249-year-olds
increases?
are going to be really productive?
Well, they'll consume more.
yeah, it's a
Hold
good
on.
point. It's a good point.
I think my brain just blanked.
I think our ideas of like again I forget which one he was saying it, but like our ideas of productivity and like the human labor aspect of things completely changes.
Nikki's dependency ratio probably
Yeah.
is a little askew there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think that Nick will have robots that he never expected. And I do think that most people will not be required to do work. It leads to a certain type of society where a universal basic income becomes kind of inevitable in so many ways.
Mandatory.
Yeah. And
I mean, what if people just are healthy and can just work when they're 140? Like, do we?
What if they're just minds and not productive citizens?
bodies. Yeah.
But why would we think we can get to the point where like we cure all diseases, but we can't get to the point where people can like?
Because it's probably
Work.
a step function, and you're probably going to the end before you like take the steps to get there.
You can't even like move Social Security age to like from 66 to 68. Like, you think
Nick
you're gonna be
just
able to
wants to
move it to
kill
like
everybody.
125? I don't know.
Isn't it just like small thinking though? Isn't it like a century or 2 centuries from now? Aren't we just gonna have just infinite abundance of a lot of things that we can't conceive of now? Isn't technology gonna just make life so productive that like we don't like the things we're talking about and ideas of scarcity and the idea that
Yes.
people have to work, aren't
I'm
some
with
of these things
Steven.
going to be irrelevant?
Yes.
I think that is completely true, but the path to get there is probably through a lot of hardship that you're not considering, and then war and a lot of contention before it gets to the point where like everyone has this abundance that you're talking about.
I like envisioning the sort of like optimistic version of what the world could look like, the protopia of what the world could look like. And yes, there's always going to be some kind of existential threat. And we talked about this in the last episode, like, population, overpopulation, end of the world. Everybody believes that like we're just going to end up either blowing each other up or the earth is going to wipe us out itself. But like, I really enjoy this idea of like, you were hitting on this earlier, Stephen, like the optimist in you, I know it's in there. You were talking about it. A lot of these problems go away. They just naturally go away. I think we can solve for things like Social Security. I think we can solve for things like labor and productivity. I think we can. I think it's just a natural evolution of the species, and it's happening before our eyes, whether we like it or not. Is it not?
Is there any,
I think so.
is there any way to solve for just like mass genocide aside from just relying on game theory?
I mean, are all of these things just inherently rooted in like scarcity to a degree? Like, what does humanity look like if there's infinite resources and everybody's like equally intelligent, good looking, strong, and there's like no need for
There's nothing to
competition.
fight over, you're saying?
Well, yeah, what if there's nothing to fight over? Like this, what, like what happens? Do we still fight? Do we just like make up some new, stupid tiny thing to fight over?
We do.
that's
We make
totally-
up a drama, and that becomes the drama of the world and the politics of that time.
It's depressing.
But no, but it's not, because it will be so, you know how we always say, like we just said, the world is better than it's ever been. It will just be another version of that. We'll still be podcasting and we'll be discussing all of the things that are wrong and the ways in which they could be better, but they'll be like really small problems compared to the magnitude of the problems that we have
talking
today.
out of your dick.
there's-
The
Yeah.
microphone
Of course.
from 20 miles away.
That'll be all that's left of me.
So our kids are going to have these wild enhancements, and they're all going to be basically cyborgs. But like the poor kid in class is going to have like the Johnson & Johnson version of the enhancement, and he's going to be like infinitely stronger and smarter and everything than our kids. But he's going to be mocked and excluded because it's like marginally worse than everybody else's enhancement.
Probably. Those would be like some of the problems that exist. But society gets better. It has continually gotten better. Technology has brought us here so far. Just in the last 200 years, look what we've accomplished. It's insane. It's remarkable. I mean, it is pretty. I mean, Ray Kurzweil, right? He has the futurist title, the best title, a career title a
Best
person
job
could
title,
have. Yeah,
yeah.
best job title. I mean, look at what he's talking about all the time, right? So you have this like exponential curve of technology that will eradicate a lot of the problems that we experience today, until the point where we have some sort of singularity event. And that singularity event, when that occurs, a lot of the problems we see today are just completely gone, and we become superhuman to everything that we've been discussing today, right?
So you don't think you think technology is just technology up, benefits up? It's just sort of a straight line to paradise throughout time.
A lot of people argue over Moore's law, and what is that?
What is a fly?
Yeah. And there's tons of people that nerd out about that concept. I think it's fascinating when they do. But yeah, I think I agree with Chris.
What about your idea, your like thought experiment on the move inward? Because I think if that outpaces the physiological enhancement, then I think that could win out just for humanity, because like people might choose that because it comes first. Like the metaverse has become a big narrative across tech, more so than gene editing.
It's kind of like an infinity loop in a way, though, right? One doesn't occur without the other.
No, but I think path dependency does describe how things play out. So like if the metaverse becomes more ubiquitous earlier than does gene editing, I think you could see a dramatically different future where, like to your point, maybe people move inward more than they do this, what we're talking about today.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting theory. They absolutely could. But I think they're like, they play with each other. You can't have a Transcension Hypothesis without the outward exponential growth of technology. I think they move hand in hand in a sense. And eventually it's kind of like a crossroad. I don't know enough about Transcension Hypothesis to tell you, but...
And nobody can predict the future.
No, not at all.
But I can see where...
But you have to move toward this era of like superhumans, longevity, the chip in the brain, all of that, to then get to a point where you begin to explore inwardly and say, maybe the search is not out there in the universe, but rather it's in the mind.
Because I think based on the way tech is playing out right now, like people lose themselves into worlds like Second Life, World of Warcraft, etc. Maybe at the same level that they lose themselves into hormone therapy and like sort of like physiology enhancement. It almost is moving in lockstep.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
Where do you think the species is going? Like, is this just like a calculus problem where it's like the limit of x as it approaches, but it never actually hits the end? We just keep striving for marginally more and more and more and more and more perfection like what are we actually striving for, I guess, when we try to make ourselves stronger and faster and better looking and, you know, change our faces on Instagram and change our DNA? Like, what are we really trying to do when we do that? And
isn't it pretty simple?
I don't
Just
know.
like
Is it
a better existence? So like even the people that lose themselves in the second life, they're like looking for a way to improve upon their existence. So like in any way that you're modifying, be it digital or, you know, like genetic, you're just trying to improve your status today. And I think that's what people like. People are pretty simple. They want to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and like people will continue to do that.
Do you think everything everybody does is ultimately just sort of like a quest for like a status game?
No.
No.
I think it's actually more basal, like literally seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, like not status.
I think it's basal, but not only pain and pleasure, but actually the expansion of the species. So I think that everything people do, and if we were given access to the tools that we're discussing, and like some of it is, super heady and out there, and like I get it, but like I think all of it is directionally about the evolution of the species. And eventually the question becomes, does the species move more outward toward exploration or more inward? And that is the biggest unknown, because otherwise we would have seen other civilizations out there. Like it just doesn't make sense that we have not had contact. It makes no sense at all.
Yeah, would you call that transcendence theory?
Transcension, yeah.
Transcension. It's really cool.
I mean, I made the whole thing up.
Everyone's Googling and
Really
doesn't
like
show up.
the Asadi theory there. That was really cool.
Yeah. All right.
I feel like that's kind of a good parting thought.
Yeah.
It's just like, what are we striving for with all the enhancements? What are we?
What do you think?
Why are we doing it? I mean, I'm thinking about it right now, and you know that I think a lot of people do a lot of things because they want to be loved. I think if you really dig super deep down all of it and scrape away a lot of the bullshit, I think even if it's not the first or second order consequence, like ultimately it kind of gets to that. And I think a world, I'm starting to sound like you, but
Thank you.
I think a world with less love is a world with more.
It's working.
Can I describe something like I think a guy like David Hoffman would appreciate this, because I took part in this crypto developer course called Kernel. Have you heard about Kernel?
No.
I mean, like they speak at like ETH Denver and stuff. Like it's like a pretty prominent thing, and all their resources are online. But the thing that stood out to me about what Kernel's teaching is like it's the why of why crypto, and particularly they had this interview with a guy who lived with these like Aboriginal type dudes in Africa. That's like really like archaic civilization, and this guy was telling you like what humanity is all about, and he said it's three things. It's like it's food, water, it's shelter, and companionship. And like to Stephen's point, like what people are searching for at all times are those three things. So like to this like meta conversation on what enhancement even means, like everything is really boiled down to those. Love is like a form of companionship, like what I said, with like this fully basal level, like improving your status, like improving your state in life is really just like improving your shelter or like your food, water, whatever. And like you know, really interesting from like a developer perspective on crypto particularly, where it's like, why are we doing crypto? It's like, well, you got to understand why humans first. Really cool developer course.
Interesting. So you think in a world of infinite love and abundance, we don't need to augment ourselves because everybody's just happy the way they are?
Would you be? Finally.
Me? Probably not, no.
I love that.
I'm trying.
I love that. I love the ending with saying that like love is really actually what it is. It's funny because I had a request recently is like, why haven't you guys talked about love yet? I was like, are we supposed to talk about that? They were like, yeah, 4 guys talking about love. That'd be rare. You guys should talk about that. I was like, yeah, that sounds challenging, but we could go for it. I love that. That was a very good conversation. Very out there. I love our life segments. I think that's it, guys, right?
That's it.
Yeah, thanks,
That's
guys.
it. That's a
Thank
wrap.
you.
Peace. See you next week.
Later.
Bye.
Later.